So inside this video, we're going to talk about how to actually get back on track after you have failed inside of your diet or with your diet. And no, it's not restricting more calories by cutting out certain foods or fasting more. It's not moving more and going to the gym and trying to burn more calories, anything like that. It's actually very, very simple, and it doesn't include any type of restriction. So I am making this video really from the standpoint of total transparency, total authenticity, because I want this channel and I want this channel to be full of truth, integrity, and I don't want to ever be the coach that makes it seem like I don't have any struggles with these things. The reason why my coaching program is the way that it is, and it is focused on men who have struggled with yo-yo dieting, yo-yoing with their weight up and down, losing and gaining weight back constantly, trying many different diets, but nothing seems to work. There hasn't been any sustainable type approach, getting results very quickly, but immediately gaining weight back when they start to introduce foods back into, or the foods that they were restricting before and avoiding. And as soon as they introduce these foods back into their diet, into their life, that all the weight comes back. And this was a big part of my story for many years. And I'm making this video to show that really these things never completely go away. I don't think, at least. I don't know. I'm 6 years into my journey from like when it really started, or maybe closer to 7 on almost from when it started. But what I've learned is these things don't really entirely go away. They just kind of sit in the back of your mind sometimes. I've learned how to cope with them much more. I've learned how to be more intentional with it. I've learned how to curb and say no and actually create discipline inside of it without it being like a food obsession or anything like that like before. By food obsession, I mean just like constantly thinking about food, when's the next meal, or really thinking about the fact that you destroyed some food earlier, you ate the food that you weren't supposed to, and worried about from there whether you're going to gain weight or get fat from there, whatever. And these things really, they do linger. And I think that there is some truth behind, like, it can be a food addiction. There was a man that I was speaking to, a few weeks ago, somebody inside my network that really was the first man I actually talked to that really resonated with this. Because I was like, look, I know that I can really help men with this, but it's, I never met any other man that really struggled with these same type of things. And he actually described it as a food addiction. And going so much as he had one cookie. He's British, so he said one cookie can totally, or one biscuit can totally derail him into gaining 60 kilograms, which is a lot, right? So yeah, that's more extreme than my personal journey, but I aim to ultimately help men like that. And if you're watching this at this point still, men like you who can ultimately lose weight in a sustainable manner and not have to avoid those foods constantly, break this cycle of losing and gaining weight constantly, break the cycle of eating off of your plan and having a lot of guilt from the fact that you have failed, shame for the fact that you failed and you didn't stick to your plan. And then from there, turning into, all right, I've got to avoid those at all costs. And then that avoidance tends to create this obsessive behavior. And then all of a sudden you get put in a position where willpower no longer is a thing. And you just say, all right, I'm going for it. And then that creates this cycle over and over. When I say diet in my own terms now, I like to think of it as more of a standard rather than a diet. Because like when we think of diet, we think of a carnivore diet, we think of a keto diet, we think of a vegan diet, right? Maybe Whole30 or paleo, whatever it is. Those, when you think of diet, you think of those things. Like there is a certain framework in how you have to eat. But I kind of, with my definition of diet, I kind of just look at it as like, hey, what's my standard? What's going to be like my North Star and how I eat, and ultimately that is going to be, it doesn't come down to a framework of like carnivore, or no carbs whatsoever, or like Whole30, hey, no dairy, what is it, like no nuts even to some degree, right? So my standards ultimately is I try to eat whole ingredient, single ingredient whole foods, large majority of the time. I do enjoy some sourdough bread, so I have that with lunch most days, but it's actually one of the more higher quality breads, right? But this is where part of a sustainable system is built into your lifestyle, right? So again, on top of my standards from there is right now I'm really trying to just stay away from sweets inside of our house ultimately. And here's why. And it's not because I'm not gonna like totally just chow down on them or anything like that. It's not an environmental thing for me. It's not that I can't control myself when I start eating them. Actually, there was a candy bowl on our table for about 2 weeks that I didn't even touch really, because I really wanted to stick to the standard, and the standard is stuck to my bigger why. And I have a bigger overall purpose that the standard is attached to, right? So my standard is not built around any type of not being able to control myself or anything like that anymore, like it used to be. I used to say, okay, I can't have those things in the house, otherwise I will eat all of it when I start. And that's actually not the case at all anymore. And I just have really high standards for myself. I don't want it to be a habit that I have a dessert every single night. Like, I don't think that I need to have that every single night. And so for me, I'm experimenting with this new standard, new system, where I only have some type of sweet when we are out with friends or family, or there's some type of special occasion involved, right? So what this looked like very, very well over the last, it was like 2 or 3 weeks, was I really only had it when I had some dessert with our church group that we do every Wednesday nights, and then at my in-laws' house if we go eat dinner over there, and or if we go out, whatever, like then I'll have some type of dessert. But again, it wasn't out of I gotta avoid these at all costs or anything like that. It was I'm just trying to really create another level of discipline for myself. So, and hence the point of this video, because I want to be totally transparent that I failed on that. I failed on that standard this last week, and I got notes right here, so I'm gonna be looking up and down. And ultimately, what this kind of looked like was it was hard to say no when bad foods were in front of me. And when I say bad foods, I mean foods that I personally don't like these terms of like good and bad foods anymore. I tried to just keep them as like, hey, these are super calorie dense or super sugary foods or less quality type foods. And this is a higher quality, more nutrient dense food. For whatever reason, that mindset has shifted for me. It's made me be, I guess, more objective with food rather than like some type of like moral judgment on it. I don't know. It's just really helped me, and something that I'll work inside my program as well. But it's just really hard for me to say no to these foods when they were in front of me. I didn't feel like I had much control. I didn't feel like I had much discipline of saying like, no, I'm choosing not to have that. For one, it used to be, hey, I cannot have that. If I do, I'm gonna get fat, I'll gain weight back. It's actually not like that anymore. But really a lot of the times it's like, hey, I know I'm gonna choose not to do that because it's just not, it doesn't fall in line with this overarching purpose, right? It's not gonna help me actually be the best husband that I need to be. It's actually not gonna help me show up to be the best business owner that I can be or the best coach that I can be, right? So And then ultimately above that, like advance the kingdom, right? So those are things that I've really tried to attach my food consumption to now. But again, I'm not perfect, and these things can still creep in. And but ultimately, like the intensity is much lower now. Frequency is much lower. Like this time, I didn't feel like I had much control and not as much discipline when these foods were in front of me. It was harder to see my vision and my overall why that I just described a second ago. And I ate more sweets than I would have liked. I didn't keep up to that standard. And I was eating more impulsively rather than being intentional to my standard and to the overall goal, right? These things did happen. Didn't stick to my plan. But ultimately, when these things would have happened in the past, it would have been like, it would have led to uncontrollably stuffing myself over the week. And it would have led to restrict immediately. Like as soon as let's say I had a dinner that was off plan, and then all of a sudden that led into me really destroying some snacks, right? And then the next day I might wake up and be like, why did you do that to yourself? Like, okay, I've gotta make up for it. I've gotta have a really light breakfast, a really light lunch, and basically just make up for what I did last night, right? So those things didn't happen this time around. I didn't hate myself for what I'd done. Yes, there was a lot of mental stuff going on. Like there is this thought of like, are you falling back into old patterns? Or what's going on here? Why are you not able to control yourself? And these things these are real thoughts that do happen in these moments. But ultimately, it was not to the same degree as I had before. It did not totally, I would say, just destroy my week, ultimately. Like, yes, there's a mental side to it. These things it's like I have to hold that there. I can't act like it's never going to, or it's not a part of me in some way anymore. I think actually keeping an eye on it and realizing like and creating a little bit of space is very good. It's been very good for me because ultimately when it comes down to it, I've lost, when I first started this overeating and then this cycle that I told you about, I gained 50 pounds. Like I went from 170 to like 220 pounds and 218 pounds. And then, I've been sitting at 195 to 198, 192 to 198 range for 3 or 4 years now, right? So I've been able to keep 20 plus pounds of weight off, right? So I've gotten much better control with these things, but this is, again, I wanted to be totally honest with it because I think that sometimes when we have worked through something that has been very painful, it's been a really hard thing inside of our life, it's easy to say, okay, I'm past that, never going back. I think it still lingers in the back of your mind is all I mean. And food is such a hard one because we eat food every day and like depending on what you used to think was that food that was going to make you overweight, get you fat, that was really bad for you, and because food is part of our lives every day, it's like if you were to drink a bunch of alcohol and you had alcoholism and you were an alcoholic, like you could just avoid alcohol. You can't just avoid food, right? And I've found that because of this cultural aspect of food and being around, all of these foods that we deem bad all the time, I believe that it's actually just much easier actually, and there's still a way to build discipline inside of your diet by allowing yourself to have some and putting it behind you and letting it be. That's been my experience. And also, because of this cultural aspect of food, being able to just enjoy these things with family and friends and stuff and not have it be such a big thing. Like that's really when it comes down to it, because that was a big part of of my journey was I missed out on some really crucial and really awesome family times connecting because I was so obsessed and so consumed with what I was eating and what was at the table and what was being served that I missed out on good times with friends and family, right? And I don't want that for anybody. So, yes, I'm going to take a sip of this decaf coffee. I love coffee. I love coffee, but it's also like 12:30. So, I just love the taste of coffee. So, I have some decaf coffee that I make in the middle of the day. So, yeah, let's move on to ways of getting back on track. Oh, there was something that I wanted to touch on inside of this. This happened last Sunday because if you are resonating with this will help you in those moments where you do start to have a really bad craving and you wanna just like go eat a bunch of food because you start to get, if you are watching this video, you start to get that feeling of like, all right, I could just like eat everything right now, and that's what it is. We had these cookies. If anybody's ever heard of Dirty Dough, I don't know if it's a cookie chain or not. Kind of similar to Crumble actually, but me and my wife went and got some of those it was Friday night, this past Friday night, and we enjoyed, like, that. We didn't totally go crazy, but there was some of those left on Sunday. And I was just like really stressed out because Sunday is usually a planning day for me. I'm getting ready for the week. And my wife was doing some of our thank you cards for our wedding. I was trying to get my work planning done for the week. And there were some other content things that I wanted to get done. And we needed to be at her parents' house in a couple hours for dinner together. And I also wanted to have some just like chill time, just me time on Sunday, kind of unwind. So got like really stressed out in the moment. And I went to open the cookie box to like eat, right? As a soothing, it's a comfort thing, trying to unload some type of discomfort that I was feeling, stress that I was feeling, really emotional eating. And my wife was just like, why are you doing that? You're eating to soothe, essentially. And I was like, good call, sweetheart. I just kind of closed the box. And there were some boxes that I needed to break down and put into our recycling. So I threw on some Orthodox chants. I'm not an Orthodox Christian, but I love Orthodox chants. Threw on some Orthodox chants and just kind of broke down the boxes and just stuffed those down. And that ended up being like a huge win, honestly, because times where, it plays into this of when stress is really high and you're starting to worry about, am I falling back in old ways? Like that can in itself feed this pattern of reaching for food because of stress, overwhelm, anger, sadness, depression, whatever. So we can reach for food inside of these moments, but ultimately we have to find outlets, different ways to just divert. And a big one for me has been my faith, but also movement in general. Movement and getting out of my head and like just into my body, and not out of a punishment way, but like as a legitimate, like there is some research behind this, is get out of your own head by moving your body, and it helps so much more. So yes, so that was the kind of a little side quest. But as far as getting back on track with the diet and in-order standards equate in my book, right, is if you have had a bad week, I've found that not weighing myself is really, really crucial, because if I used to have this experience that if I did weigh myself after having a poor day of eating, maybe a poor couple days, whatever, and I was up in weight, like that would begin to spiral me mentally, and then that would create this cycle of like I would go reach for food. It's just like a fuck it, whatever, I already failed type deal. So like I'm just gonna add fuel to the fire, right? So not weighing myself, I haven't weighed myself in like a week and a half. And I've done these long periods of time over the last really 3 or 4 years where sometimes I'll go like months without weighing myself at all. Sometimes I'll weigh myself on a more daily basis. And I've just found that anytime I do it more daily, it just becomes such an obsession for me, and I just don't want to deal with it. And I think it's just silly to do it on a daily basis. Uh, Even if you are in a weight loss journey, I think it's actually just silly because it puts the emphasis and the focus into, let's say if you weren't down on weight, you're so focused on the weight rather than like just showing up and doing what you need to be doing, like your training, your movement wise, showing up husband, father, in your world and work and all these other things. It just creates an added stressor that I just found is not really worth adding to or putting onto your plate, because it can be just like such an added thing that I just don't want to deal with. So I found it's worked for me really, really well. Number two is no restriction and being intentional. Coffee break. So no restriction is, I'll take an example for you. I had a meal, a meal that would have not been up to my standard a few weeks ago. And that was on a Saturday night. And then, so Sunday morning, I usually do banana pancakes with my wife. I'll make banana pancakes for her and I before we go to church. And I just really had like I needed to just very light on the bananas, the carbs, and ultimately make up for what I did last night, having a little extra calories last night. And I was just like, no, we're not starting this ultimately. And so that's what I mean by no restriction. It's just you're going and you're eating normally. And this is another point on here, is zooming out and looking at the big picture. Zooming out and looking at the big picture is a big one here as well. Because yes, you could go ahead and just restrict and say, okay, I'm going to fast or whatever, lose that weight back. But I found every single time that I did that, it just perpetuated the cycle. Like it just made it worse every single time. And it just made me more obsessive. And I got just so tired. Like I'm sick of feeling like I'm controlled over food. Like this is silly. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So being able to zoom out, look at the big picture and say, look, it's one meal out of 21 in the week, and how many weeks are there in a year? 52 or something. 52 times 21. I don't know. Right? So when you look at that, it's like, dude, it's consistency wins. 80% wins, man. It doesn't need to be perfect. And being able to zoom out and look at that big picture and stop needing to be perfect has just been so beneficial for me. And another one here is no extra moving just to make up for it. I mentioned movement being a really good tool to help cope. And when you're in a state of like, I'm ravenous, like I want to just destroy movement can be a really good diversion from there. But trying to use movement to like make up for and as a form of like punishment for what you did, again, it just perpetuates that cycle rather than just like, okay, I'm gonna forget it and move on with my life. Okay, my life has gotten so much better when I've just been able to say, okay, I'm gonna forget it and move on with my life, rather than needing to make up for it in some way through restriction or through extra workouts or whatever. Because ultimately what's going on there is then you're taking away time and energy from loved ones too, connection, because you are so obsessed with needing to go burn those extra calories off that it becomes an added stressor, again, similar to the weighing yourself. And again, this is all my own experience and things that I've dealt with that I found finally got me to a point where like I really don't care nearly much about food. Yes, I have these moments like I'm explaining in this video, but man, this was like nothing compared to what things used to be, and how, poor my mindset and how it used to be around food, and how obsessive I was over it, and how much it just like controlled my life and my decision making in a lot of ways. So, and then last one here, and definitely most important, is leaning into my faith and just letting grace wash over and say, look, dude, the expectation to be perfect is unattainable. I will never be perfect to these standards. I will never be perfect to the standards that I hold myself to. I have very high standards of myself. And by my standards, I tend to expect perfection, and it's just not going to happen. So being able to lean into my faith and prayer and realize like there's only one perfect man, and that was Jesus Christ himself. I will not be perfect in these things. So it's helped me a lot. That's also helped me a lot. And just realizing like, dude, you don't need to be perfect either, because my worth, there's a big part of my worth and who I was as a man built into how I looked and how I showed up and how much I put on the bar and what I weighed, all these things. And in reality, like, dude, this thing is gonna wither away eventually. And it's like, yes, I'm called to keep it healthy. It's a dwelling place for the spirit, right? But I also know that perfection is not attainable in it. So that's where my faith has come in. One point that I did forget to know, or that I did forget to talk about too, is taking a look at my training, because another element here is if your training is really, really high intensity and it's a little bit too high intensity for what your body can adapt to right now. The phase that I was doing is I was getting after it. Like it was a harder, more intense phase of training that I had done than I had done in a long time. I was really tired last week, very low energy, a little more achy, like a little bit burnt out in a way. So I did take a look at my training as a side note and see where I can adjust a little bit there to help recovery a little bit. Because if recovery is poor and I'm more lethargic, low energy, then that will lead me to just reach for food and be more impulsive as well. So little side note there as well. But man, yeah, I just wanted to be totally honest and transparent and with the things that I dealt with last week and that I have always kind of dealt with. And I hope that this lands well with some of you guys. If one of you guys made it this far, I appreciate it. And if you do struggle with any of the things that I did talk about inside this video, I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. I will leave my Instagram caption or my Instagram link down below. Shoot me a message, shoot me a DM. Love to chat with you about that. I'll also put my booking link down below if you want to just hop on a call and talk about some of these things, see how we might be able to help you. Again, my coaching program help men that are in this yo-yo cycle of losing weight, gaining weight back immediately, trying many different diets and just not able to keep weight off because they're not doing it in a sustainable manner. But without doing any more diets and without having to start over every single Monday like I used to as well. So yeah, that's what I aim to break inside of my coaching. But thank you for making it this far, and we will see you guys in the next one. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, anything that you want to see more of, and God bless. See you next one.